when economists talk about the hidden drags on the economy, the first area that they look at is consumer confidence. And the major component of consumer confidence is the rise in the consumer price index, which this week climbed to 7% from 1.5% at the beginning of January of 2021. This is the highest consumer price index since can you wait for it, 82. So Mike, in the most recent report, higher prices for food were the most notable contributor for the rise in inflation. And the Washington Post also was reporting that there are scarcity in our grocery stores along the region. What is going on here?
I think you're seeing, we've had challenges with the supply chain. I think you're continuing to see that. The question is this a national issue? Is this a local issue? And I think it's a national issue. I think we've seen that it's been an interesting challenge, but you look at food, you look at energy prices. I think one of the things that's become very clear is we thought that energy independence was a really good thing. Well, it is, except what we're finding out now is our own oil producers that are in the US want to make money just like those folks we imported oil from before. And so they're not inclined to reduce those energy prices. They're happy to have gas be $3.39 a gallon, and there doesn't appear to be any movement because there's no indication that there's actually a shortage of supply. So the question becomes, why aren't the prices coming back down since we have energy independence now? So, I think you've got some really interesting scenarios that are national issues that I think business has to take a look at, and I think it becomes a real challenge.
Oh, Mike, you were tap dancing through the raindrops on that one. My goodness. The first thing President Biden did was shut down the Keystone Pipeline and ban fracking on federal lands. Of course, the energy prices are going to rise.
But there's been no report of any shortage in supply. That's not been an issue at all.
That's because they're importing more oil.
No, we're not. We're high. We're the highest oil producing point right now in our nation's history. We've got more locally produced oil today than we've ever had, and yet amazingly, our oil prices are as high as they've been in 40 years. Stunning. How do you think that happened?
They float up to the world market. So, but Lori, the impact of inflation is felt by all of us at the gasoline pump and the grocery stores. Is there going to be a political impact from inflation?
Oh, sure.
Oh, yes. There was a poll, a Goucher poll in October, and 28% of voters feel that jobs and the economy are the number one issue. And even though we keep hearing from the Democrats, all social justice issues and all that are so important, that only got 13% approval as a top issue in that poll. So families, the biggest issue, inflation is the tip of the iceberg. Families are hurting right now. They're dipping into their 30% at least of families of voters are dipping into their retirement funds to be able to survive right now. Some of them are unemployed. Some of them are just trying to meet the needs with the inflation that's occurred. And a lot of them are trying to help their kids to get through a year of learning. Some of them are no longer in public schools, and they've had to, one person in the family may have stopped working so that they can teach their child at home, or they've had to pay for private school. So these are expenses that families didn't know that they were going to have a couple of years ago. So it's not just inflation. There's so much more happening within the family, and you better bet they're going to be voting in November much more than they voted in the past, because it really is hitting them, and they want to make a difference and vote for candidates that will support them.
So Mike, it's a throw the bum out election.
Well, it's always a challenge, right? It's a midterm election. It generally goes to the other party anyway. So I think inflation will have a political ramification. I think there are a lot of factors. The economy always has an undue influence, I think, on an election in either direction. And you go back to 92, Clinton won because of the economy, and yet we ended up with the greatest economy we'd seen in the next 4 years, later put in place in large part by policies put in place by President Bush. So, it plays all of these different elements. And so I think you're going to see a real impact. The question becomes, how do you actually begin to affect the inflation and move us in the right direction?
Well, that's a great response, because I don't think any of us have that magic wand that we're going to be able to wave it and do away with the inflation that's baked into the cake right now. When we
And
come back from the short break,
unfortunately, in either party. And so there are going to be a lot of folks talking about it from the right who are saying they've got some answer, and I'm pretty sure they don't. And the folks on the left obviously are really struggling to try and figure out what the answer is there too. So it should be a good conversation, which in a perfect world would bring us all back together again. But that doesn't seem to be the direction we're heading.
I'll leave it at that, because when we come back from this short break, the Montgomery County Council considers a vaccine passport mandate. Does that make any sense? Stay tuned.